Hi, my name is Maya Hayes, and I am a graduate assistant and personal trainer for the Georgia State Recreation Center. And today I'll be showing you a mobility and recovery routine that's geared towards runners. So mobility and recovery is really important for runners because running is such a high impact repetitive motion. So whether you're a beginning runner or an avid runner, it's really important to continuously work on mobility and recovery. So today I'll show you a routine that's geared towards hip mobility and hip recovery. So first we'll work on a hip mobility movement that focuses on improving 4 movements of the hip, and then we'll work on a hip movement that helps to improve hip flexibility and also helps to release any tension around the hip and low back area. Alright, the only thing you'll need for today's routine is just a yoga mat and either a yoga block or a stack of books or a pillow, just something that you can use to elevate your feet. Alright, and that's it. So let's go ahead and get started. So for our first movement, we're going to be working through 4 motions of the hip. So this is to include hip flexion, hip external rotation, hip internal rotation, and then hip extension. So you want to start with nice tall posture, holding onto something for support. And we're going to start with hip flexion. So you're going to bring your knee up, making a 90-degree angle from your hip, your knee, and your ankle. From here, we'll move into external rotation. So you're going to open up your hip, keeping that 90-degree angle. Next, we'll move into internal rotation. So you're going to rotate the knee down, bringing the foot behind you, almost like you're trying to stamp the wall behind you with your foot. And our very last motion here, we're going to move into hip extension. So you're going to extend your leg out and then bring it down to meet your other leg. So moving through once again, we have our hip flexion, moving into our external rotation. Then we internally rotate, and then extend the leg out for our hip extension. All right, going through one more time, we've got our hip flexion, rotating out for our external rotation, bringing the knee in for internal rotation, and then extending the leg out nice and long. So I wanted to demonstrate from a slightly different angle here so you can see a little bit more up close each movement, the flexion, the external rotation, the internal rotation, and then the hip extension. So as you move through each movement, try to keep your weight balanced. So try not to shift more to one side versus the other, and then keep your foot flexed the entire time. So you can maintain balance by keeping the core engaged, by pulling the belly button in towards the spine so that you stay nice and stable throughout the entire movement. So now that we've worked on hip mobility, we're going to move into a recovery exercise next. So you're going to grab whatever you're using to elevate your feet. So again, it can be a stack of books, a yoga block, whatever you have on hand. You're going to bring it in front of you, and then you're going to take your feet and you're going to place it on top of whatever you're using. So after you have your feet on top, you're going to bring your soles to touch, and you're going to scoot your hips in until you feel a stretch along the inner thighs. So this is our butterfly stretch. So you can stay here a moment just to assess how tight your hips are, but eventually you'll want to come down to the mat, and this makes it more of a passive stretch here. So gravity will naturally pull your knees down, allowing your hips to open up, which will help to release any tension along the hip area and the low back. So you can relax in the stretch here. And again, it should be very passive. It shouldn't feel forced at any point. For the entire routine, I would recommend doing the hip mobility movement for 5 to 10 repetitions per leg. And the hip recovery movement, you can start out holding anywhere from 30 to 60 seconds. Alright, that concludes today's runner's mobility and recovery routine. I would recommend completing this routine anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week to continuously work on improving hip mobility and hip recovery. And you can certainly modify the amount of reps that you do for the mobility portion and the length of time that you do for the recovery portion as well. Alright, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.